The sky over Zyphora Prime burned with the harsh light of twin suns. Smoke and fire twisted together in chaotic streams, rising from the shattered cities where humans had once tried to live. Now, the planet was a hunting ground. From orbit, the Xylar warriors scanned the surface with cold precision, their long limbs and armored bodies moving like shadows through the ruins. They had called humanity weak, fragile, and not worth their time. That was why they underestimated Captain Kale. Kale moved through the ruins as if he belonged to the chaos. His boots crunched over the twisted metal and scorched concrete. A heavy energy rifle rested against his shoulder, but his eyes were scanning, calculating. He wasn't looking for glory, just survival, and perhaps an opportunity to teach the Xylar a lesson they would never forget. The sudden screech of metal twisting under strain caught his attention. A building, or what was left of it, shuddered as if the entire structure were on the verge of collapse. From within the wreckage came a cry, sharp, human, desperate. Kale's eyes narrowed. There was no hesitation. He dropped into a crouch, sliding across a rubble-strewn street and sprinted toward the sound. Inside the building, smoke swirled and fire licked the walls. Debris hung precariously from the ceiling, ready to fall at any moment. Trapped under a beam was a human figure, a woman in a pilot's suit, her helmet cracked, visor fogged with dust and sweat. She struggled, screaming curses at the heavy beam pinning her leg. Kale didn't waste a moment. He vaulted over a fallen wall and lifted the beam with his bare hands, muscles straining. The Xylar were not far away. He could hear their taunting cries echoing through the streets, their plasma weapons crackling in the distance. The woman's eyes widened as Kale pulled her free, dust and ash coating them both. "You're an idiot," she snapped, pulling herself upright. Her voice was harsh, filled with equal parts anger and fear. "Do you even know what you're doing?" "Want to find out together." The Xylar warriors advanced, their long limbs and jagged armor moving with terrifying precision. They didn't seem concerned with stealth. They thrived on intimidation. Humans were prey, that much was obvious. Kale grabbed her hand. "Move!" he shouted. Together they sprinted across the broken street, dodging blasts that exploded against walls with deafening noise. The ruins offered little cover, but Kale's experience allowed him to anticipate the Xylar's movements. They were fast but predictable. "Wait, what are you doing?" she shouted, panting as they ran. "We can't outrun them. We just have to survive long enough to make them think we can." Her hair was plastered to her face, sweat and grime streaked across her cheeks, but there was fire in her eyes. Fire that Kale recognized, human fire. They turned a corner and Kale froze. Across the street, a group of Xylar had set up an ambush. Energy rifles raised, they blocked every obvious path of escape. The woman froze, realizing the danger, but Kale's eyes were sharp, calculating. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice low but steady. "And don't try anything stupid." Kale relied on strategy, improvisation, and just enough courage to take risks no one else would. He grabbed a rusted pipe and struck a loose cable, sending sparks flying. The Xylar froze, momentarily distracted by the sudden electrical surge. Kale grabbed the woman's arm and pulled her into the shadows. They darted behind a collapsed wall as the sparks ignited a small explosion, drawing the Xylar's attention in the wrong direction. She finally spoke, breathless. "You're insane. You just risked both our lives for a distraction." Insane is sometimes the best survival tactic. We don't even know where it leads. It was silent except for the distant crackle of energy weapons. The woman collapsed against a wall, panting heavily. "You're impossible," she muttered, shaking her head. "Do you always do this? Run into danger without a plan?" Humans were always like this, she realized, reckless, bold, and stubborn. Maybe that was why they survived when everyone else expected them to fail. The calm didn't last long. The Xylar were methodical hunters. They would search every alley, every street, every ruin until they found their prey. Kale scanned the area, thinking fast. They couldn't stay here. They needed a plan, something the Xylar would never anticipate. "Listen," Kale said, crouching low. "We're not just running anymore. We're going to make them chase shadows. We'll use the terrain, traps, and whatever else we can find. They think humans are weak, but we're anything but weak. I've seen humans do things no one else believed possible. Trust me." They reached an abandoned transport hub, half buried in rubble. Kale pried open the rusted doors just enough for them to slip inside. The interior was dark, but it provided temporary safety. He crouched near the entrance, peeking through cracks in the metal, calculating the Xylar's next move. The woman leaned against the wall, catching her breath. "I don't know if I should thank you or hate you," she said. You just risked everything for me for what? Some stubborn sense of heroism. Humans were underestimated for a reason. They were unpredictable, and when cornered, they could do things no other species could imagine. Kale was about to show her exactly that. Hours passed in silence. Outside, the ruins shifted as small fires burned themselves out, and the Xylar continued their hunt, unaware that their prey was preparing to turn the tables. Kale studied the transport hub, noting weak points, escape routes, and potential traps. Every piece of debris, every shadow, every structural flaw could become a weapon. The woman watched him work, her frustration softening into something else, curiosity, maybe even admiration. "You really think we can fight them?" she asked quietly. Kale looked up, eyes sharp, full of determination. "We don't have to fight them head-on. That's the human way. We improvise, we adapt, and we survive. They'll never see it coming." They would keep coming, confident in their superiority, but Kale wasn't afraid. He had a plan, one that would test every instinct, every ounce of cunning and courage he possessed. The first step had been simple: save a life. The next step was to make the hunters question everything they knew about humans, and Kale was ready. The ruins of Xiphora Prime stretched endlessly under the twin suns, scorched and jagged, a labyrinth of destruction where humans were considered weak and easy prey. Kale moved cautiously through the rubble with Lyra close behind, their shadows stretching long across broken streets and crumbled walls. The Xylar were still hunting, confident in their superiority, their cries echoing across the ruined city. Every footstep, every spark of plasma fire reminded Kale that they were outnumbered, outgunned, and underestimated, but that was exactly the advantage he intended to exploit. Lyra stumbled over a piece of twisted metal. "This planet is insane," she muttered, brushing dust from her suit. "How do people even survive here? When they follow, they'll think they're chasing two easy targets." Their long, jagged limbs moved with a terrifying precision, their eyes glowing faint red in the dust-filled air. Kale waited, watching their every motion. Then, with a sudden flick of his wrist, he triggered a pile of debris to fall, creating a cloud of dust and noise that drew the Xylar's attention. Lyra blinked. "You're insane." "Just adaptable." Lyra began to notice something about Kale that she hadn't seen before. He wasn't just brave, he was calculating. Every step, every choice was precise, exploiting weaknesses no Xylar warrior would expect. Humans were chaotic, but Kale turned that chaos into strategy. Suddenly, a metallic screech echoed above them. A Xylar scout drone hovered overhead, its red sensors sweeping the area. Kale's hand shot out, grabbing a piece of broken piping. With precise aim, he jammed it into the drone's energy intake vent. Sparks flew, and the drone convulsed before crashing into a pile of rubble with a deafening clang. Lyra stared wide-eyed. "No one has ever done that. No warrior ever could. We humans have our ways." They reached the remains of an old industrial complex, its steel skeleton towering over them. Kale paused, studying the structure. "This place," he said slowly, "we can use it, not as a hideout but as a weapon. They don't consider that we can fight with our minds." As night fell on Xiphora Prime, the ruins became even more treacherous. Shadows lengthened, twisting into forms that seemed almost alive. Kale moved silently, guiding Lyra to a section of the complex where the machinery could be used to collapse entire sections of the structure. It was dangerous, but it was their best chance to even the odds. Lyra finally spoke, her voice quieter than before. "You really believe we can do this?" Yet Kale remained calm, focused, and relentless. Lyra, despite her initial annoyance at his recklessness, began to trust him. Humans were resilient in ways the Xylar would never understand. Then the Xylar found them. A patrol of 5 warriors entered the complex, their armor gleaming even in the dim light. They moved with the same confidence and arrogance that had allowed their species to dominate so many worlds. One of them, taller than the rest, with jagged silver armor, barked a command. Kale whispered to Lyra, "Stay hidden, watch and learn." A section of the upper floor collapsed, sending heavy beams crashing down. The Xylar were momentarily stunned, their attention diverted from the humans. Kale and Lyra slipped through another exit, moving silently while the aliens scrambled to recover. Lyra couldn't help but gasp. That was incredible. No one has ever done that before." "That's why they underestimate us." Kale quickly assessed the ancient machinery, noting power conduits, control panels, and structural weaknesses. "This is it," he said. "This is where we turn the tables. Then we'll show them what humans are really capable of." For the first time, she realized that humans weren't simply strong or lucky. They were creative, adaptable, and relentless in ways the Xyler could never imagine. Hours passed as they prepared. Outside, the Xyler continued their patrols, unaware that their prey was setting a trap of their own. Kale and Lyra moved with quiet efficiency, using shadows and cover to avoid detection while laying the groundwork for a counterattack that would leave the aliens stunned. Finally, Kale stepped back and surveyed their work. "We're ready," he said. "Tomorrow, they'll learn that humans fight differently. They'll learn that we're dangerous, even when we seem weak. And that's exactly why we survive." It was time to show the Xyler that humans were more than they seemed. Lyra, for the first time, felt a spark of hope. She had been skeptical, angry, and fearful, but watching Kale work had changed her perspective. Humans were underestimated not because they were weak, but because their strength was unexpected. And Kale was living proof that no Xyler warrior had ever encountered a human like him before. The night passed slowly. Kale kept watch while Lyra rested, his mind already planning the next move. Every weak point in the Xyler patrols, every structural flaw in the ruins, every potential trap, he accounted for it all. By dawn, he would unleash a plan that no alien warrior could foresee. And when that dawn came, the Xyler would learn that humans were more than prey. They were clever, resourceful, and dangerous in ways that defied expectation. Kale glanced at Lyra one last time before settling into a crouch to watch the approaching light. She had called him an idiot earlier, doubting his judgment. Now she could see the method in his madness. Humans were unpredictable, and that unpredictability was lethal. As the first rays of the twin suns lit the ruins, Kale whispered to himself, "Let them come. They'll see what humans are made of." The dawn over Sci-fi Prime cast long, jagged shadows across the ruins. Smoke drifted from smoldering fires, and the air was heavy with dust and heat from the twin suns. Kale crouched in the control room, his eyes scanning the ruined streets below. The Xyler had taken the bait. Patrols were moving predictably, assuming their prey was trapped. Lyra sat beside him, tense but alert. Her suit was scratched and dust-streaked, her hair damp with sweat, but her eyes had changed. The earlier anger had softened into awe, tempered by the realization that humans, even ordinary ones, could do extraordinary things. She glanced at Kale. "This is crazy. You really think this will work?" "They think they know what humans can do. They're about to learn they were wrong." Their claws clicked against the metal and stone, their glowing red eyes sweeping the area. They were confident, arrogant in a way that only a species certain of its dominance could be. Kale knew they had underestimated humans since the moment they arrived on Sci-fi Prime. They believed this planet was just a playground for their strength. They were about to discover it was a trap. Kale motioned to Lyra, "Ready." Above them, a Xyler drone swooped low, scanning for movement. Kale triggered a section of the floor above it to collapse. The metal groaned and twisted, sending sparks cascading toward the drone. It convulsed, energy flaring from its sensors before crashing into a pile of rubble. Lyra's eyes widened. "You did it again, that's insane." "Creative." Above the patrol, a section of the roof collapsed in a shower of twisted metal and sparks. Xyler claws scrambled to avoid the falling debris, but some were caught, pinned beneath beams and rubble. Their screams echoed through the ruins, metal shrieking as it twisted under pressure. The remaining patrol froze, disoriented. Lyra gasped. "They can't believe this is happening." "Follow me." Kale paused at the edge of the complex, peering down into a wide courtyard where an enormous war machine awaited. A hulking construct of steel and alien design, its weapons glinting in the sunlight. This was no ordinary Xyler patrol. This was a predator designed to hunt humans like Kale and Lyra for sport, a machine that could level an entire city block in minutes. Lyra's breath caught. That's impossible to stop." Every piece of debris was potential cover. Kale was not just running. He was shaping the battlefield, creating a maze where the Xyler machine's size and power would become a disadvantage rather than an advantage. From above, the war machine's sensors flicked, detecting movement. Its weapons charged with a low hum, and it stomped forward, crushing debris under massive feet. The ground shook with each step. Kale and Lyra moved like shadows, slipping through narrow gaps, using the ruins to mask their presence. Kale paused at a fallen tower, studying a weak section near the machine's path. "Here," he whispered, "we'll make them regret ever underestimating humans. Not trap it, force it to expose itself, and then we hit it where it's weakest. They think strength wins every time. We'll show them brains beat brawn." Together, they manipulated the environment, redirecting energy, shifting debris, creating pressure points that the machine would be forced to navigate. It stumbled slightly massive feet sinking into unstable ground. Sparks flew as weapons discharged prematurely, triggering small explosions Kale had set in advance. The machine's sensors flared. It realized the humans were not where it expected. It swung its massive arm, firing energy blasts into the ruins, but each shot triggered more traps, each blast weakening the ground beneath it. Kale and Lyra darted through the shadows, moving closer to the heart of the trap. "They can't recover from this," Lyra muttered, awe in her voice. "No warrior has ever done this. They think we're weak, that's why this works." The war machine toppled forward, crushing several support beams and sending a shower of metal and sparks into the air. Lyra's eyes widened. It's falling." With careful manipulation of the environment, he forced the machine to stumble again and again, each movement weakening it further. The Xyler had never faced an opponent who could think in 3 dimensions at once, who could use the terrain, the environment, and their own assumptions against them. Finally, with a deafening roar, the war machine toppled completely, its massive weapons sparking and smoking. The remaining Xyler warriors froze, stunned at the sight. They had been so confident in their superiority, so certain that humans were weak and predictable, and now their deadliest asset lay broken before them. Kale exhaled, finally allowing himself a small smile. He turned to Lyra, who was staring in disbelief. "No warrior ever could," she whispered. You really did it." The Xyler had retreated to regroup, wary now of the humans they had once considered easy prey. Kale and Lyra stood amidst the wreckage, dust and smoke clinging to their suits, hearts still pounding from the adrenaline. Lyra finally laughed, a breathless, incredulous sound. "I don't know if I should hate you or admire you," she said. "You just risked everything for this, for me, for humans. I've never seen anything like it. Humans aren't weak. We're different, unpredictable." The humans were no longer just fleeing. They were controlling the battlefield, forcing the hunters to react rather than act. As the twin suns rose higher, casting light across the jagged ruins, Kale knew that this was only the beginning. The Xyler would adapt, they would regroup, and they would try again. But they had learned something important. Humans were not prey. Humans were dangerous, clever, and relentless. And Kale was a reminder that no warrior, no matter how strong or skilled, could predict what humans were capable of. Lyra glanced at him, her expression a mixture of respect and disbelief. "You really are insane," she said softly. Kale's eyes sparkled. "Or maybe I'm just human." They would remember Kale. The ruins of Xiphora Prime were silent except for the occasional hiss of cooling metal and the distant rumble of the retreating Xyler. Kale and Lyra stood amidst the wreckage of the fallen war machine, their suits scorched and scratched, their breathing heavy but steady. The twin suns reflected off broken steel and blackened concrete, casting long, jagged shadows across the ruined city. For the first time, the humans were no longer running. They were setting the stage for victory. Kale's eyes scanned the horizon. The Xyler commander, a towering figure of jagged silver armor, had not yet intervened. He was gathering his forces, preparing for the humans to be crushed under superior strength. Kale knew what had to be done. This was the moment to turn the hunt completely on its head. Lyra wiped sweat from her brow, still catching her breath. "We actually stopped it," she said, pointing to the fallen war machine. "We survived. That thing could have killed us in seconds. We didn't just survive. We proved that humans are unpredictable. We've shown them that brains can beat brawn. Now it's time to finish the lesson." "We're going to use this facility," he said. "Not as shelter, but as a weapon. The Xyler think we fight like they do. They rely on strength, predictability, fear. We'll show them that humans fight differently. With what we've got and with what they don't expect. Their machines, their armor, their weapons, they're impressive, but they're predictable. We're going to make them dance to our tune." Every door, every hallway, every piece of debris could be used as a weapon or obstacle. Humans were not fast like the Xyler, nor did they possess massive strength, but they had imagination and adaptability, the traits no Xyler could anticipate. Hours passed as they worked, the twin suns climbing high, turning the ruins into a furnace. Sweat dripped from Kale's brow, but his mind remained sharp, constantly calculating the Xyler's likely responses. Lyra began to understand his method. Every trap, every rerouted power conduit, every unstable beam was part of a chain reaction designed to undermine the Xyler's confidence, strength, and perception of control. Finally, Kale stepped back and surveyed their work. "We're ready," he said. "It's time to bring them in." Strength alone won't save them. The first group of Xylers stepped into a narrow alley. Sparks shot from broken panels, sending small bursts of energy toward their feet. The ground shifted under pressure plates Kale had activated. One Xyler stumbled, tripping over debris, and fell into a collapsing wall. The rest froze, unsure of what was happening, their red eyes flickering with confusion. Lyra whispered, barely able to contain her excitement. This is incredible. You're controlling the battlefield." He barked a command, gesturing to his remaining warriors. They advanced carefully, weapons raised, expecting to crush the humans quickly. Kale and Lyra moved through the shadows, guiding them toward the traps and hazards. A sudden burst of energy shot across the path, knocking a group of Xyler off balance. Kale triggered it with a small device, laughing quietly under his breath. "They're learning the hard way," he said. Lyra watched, wide-eyed. "No warrior has ever done this. No machine could survive humans thinking like this." The humans had no weapons capable of matching his raw power, but they didn't need to. The environment was their ally, and Kale had planned every step. The commander stopped suddenly, sensing movement. His red eyes scanned the ruins, focusing on a nearby shadow. Kale pressed a button, and a section of debris above the commander's head shifted. Sparks fell, catching his attention. Kale and Lyra moved in opposite directions, flanking him. "You think humans are clever," the commander boomed, voice amplified by his armor. "You are nothing." The massive figure dodged, but each movement caused stress on the surrounding ruins, creating instability the humans could exploit. Lyra followed Kale's instructions precisely, activating devices that created noise, sparks, and small explosions to distract and mislead the Xyler forces. Every step was calculated, designed to force the commander into a predictable path. Finally, the commander stepped onto a section of unstable ground Kale had prepared. The floor groaned, metal twisted, and with a loud crash, the structure beneath him gave way partially. The commander roared in fury, swinging massive arms, but Kale had anticipated the reaction. "Now, Lyra!" Kale shouted. She pressed a sequence on the control panel they had rigged. A series of energy conduits overloaded, sending bursts of power that pinned the commander temporarily against a wall. Sparks and smoke filled the air, and for the first time the Xyler realized humans were not just surviving, they were dictating the battle. Kale approached, careful to stay just out of reach. "This is what humans can do when underestimated," he said, voice calm, even as the commander struggled against the traps. "Brains, strategy, and courage, things no warrior can anticipate." Each step he took, each movement, led him deeper into the trap. The Xyler warriors were stunned, realizing that human ingenuity had turned their strongest fighter into a pawn. Lyra, breathless, whispered, I can't believe this. Humans actually did it." "Stay sharp." With one final sequence, Kale activated the remaining energy conduits, creating a controlled explosion that knocked the commander off balance, sending him sprawling into a pile of rubble. Silence followed, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal. The Xyler commander struggled to rise, but the humans had controlled the battlefield so thoroughly that even his strength was insufficient. He looked around, realizing that the humans had manipulated every element of the ruins to their advantage. For the first time, the Xyler commander felt the true power of human unpredictability. Kale stood nearby, hands free but ready. "You thought strength alone was enough," he said. "You were wrong. Humans survive with courage, creativity, and adaptability. That's why no warrior, no machine, could ever match us." Confidence shattered, they realized that humans were no longer prey. They were a force that could not be predicted, a species that could think beyond the limitations of conventional combat. Kale and Lyra watched as the aliens withdrew. The ruins of Xiphora Prime, once a hunting ground, now belonged to the humans, at least for this moment. The battlefield had been transformed not by strength, but by intelligence and determination. Lyra turned to Kale, awe in her eyes. "I called you an idiot before. I was wrong." "That's part of the process." The twin suns began to set, casting long shadows across the shattered city. Kale and Lyra took a moment to rest, leaning against a crumbled wall. Dust coated their suits, and exhaustion weighed heavily on them, but their spirits were high. Humanity had survived again, not through strength, but through intelligence, courage, and an unyielding determination to overcome the impossible. Lyra finally spoke, her voice quiet. "I understand now. Humans were not weak, we're something else, something dangerous to anyone who underestimates us." They had proven that they could challenge the strongest and the fiercest, not with brute force, but with the ingenuity that no Xylar warrior, no matter how skilled, could anticipate. Kale glanced at Lyra, his expression serious but calm. Tomorrow we push further. We don't just survive. We show them what humans can truly do. Then let's make tomorrow count. No warrior had ever seen this coming. No machine had ever survived humans thinking beyond the limits of convention. And as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Kale knew that the humans' moment of reckoning was only beginning. The night on Zyphora Prime was quiet, but the air thrummed with tension. The ruins of the once great city were lit by flickering fires and the dim glow of molten metal. Kale and Lyra moved through the shattered streets, eyes sharp, muscles tense, ready for whatever the Xylar might throw at them next. The humans had survived the war machine, toppled the Xylar commander, and shown that creativity and courage could outmatch brute strength. But the battle was not yet over. Kale paused on a crumbled overpass, scanning the horizon. The Xylar had retreated, but their forces were regrouping, gathering behind barricades and calling in reinforcements. Kale's jaw tightened. They think retreat will give them the advantage. They're wrong. Humans never play by predictable rules. Not with brute force, not with reckless attacks, but by showing them what humans are capable of. This isn't just survival. This is humanity proving itself. The humans would use every advantage of the terrain, every weakness in the alien armor, and every unpredictable trick they could devise. Lyra followed him, admiration mixing with awe. I never imagined humans could do something like this, she said softly. We're dangerous, aren't we? And no one has ever seen it coming. They assumed badly. Kale crouched behind a steel beam, checking the connections on a control panel. Sparks flickered, and Lyra moved quickly to assist, rerouting energy flows exactly as Kale instructed. The plan was simple in concept, but complex in execution. Draw the Xylar forward, guide them through the maze of traps and hazards, and then unleash the energy of the relay tower at the precise moment to disable their communications and weapons, leaving them vulnerable. Lyra's hands trembled slightly as she worked, the weight of the moment pressing on her. This is insane, she whispered. We're really doing this, against them, alone. Their steps echoed against the ruins, a symphony of arrogance and expectation. They believed the humans were desperate, weak, and predictable. Kale smirked behind his mask. Every step they took into the maze of traps brought them closer to failure, closer to understanding that human ingenuity was the deadliest weapon in the galaxy. He signaled to Lyra. Engage sequence. Timing is everything. One patrol stepped on a pressure plate hidden beneath rubble. Sparks shot up as a massive beam tilted precariously above them. The Xylar froze, claws raised, but it was too late. The beam fell, pinning several of them beneath its weight. Chaos erupted as energy discharges triggered small explosions, and the remaining warriors faltered, unsure where to step or shoot. Kale and Lyra moved quickly, staying ahead of the chaos. Each section of the city they passed had been rigged to create maximum disruption with minimal human exposure. Every trap, every collapse, every spark was designed to guide the Xylar toward the final stage, the energy relay. The Xylar commander, still alive but weakened from the previous encounter, roared orders. He stomped through the streets, trying to regain control, but each step led him into another trap. The humans were no longer fleeing. They were shaping the battlefield, forcing the aliens to react instead of act. Lyra followed Kale's movements closely, her initial fear replaced by confidence. I get it now, she said. This is why humans survive, not because we're the strongest. Because we're clever, unpredictable, dangerous. The hum of power filled the air, a warning and a promise. Below, the Xylar commander approached, leading his remaining warriors. They had recovered enough to advance cautiously, but the humans were ready. Kale triggered the final sequence. Energy surged through the conduits, sending arcs of power across the ruined streets, activating traps that collapsed floors, shifted debris, and disabled several weapons. The Xylar stumbled, confused and unprepared for this display of strategic brilliance. Lyra's eyes shone. It's working. They can't handle this. The next step is the hardest, but it will end the fight. Kale and Lyra moved to the edge of the plaza, watching as the commander stumbled onto the trap. The structure collapsed, sending him sprawling toward the chasm. He roared, claws flailing, but the humans' timing and preparation were perfect. The Xylar commander was forced into the unstable pit, unable to recover. Below, the remaining Xylar warriors froze, realizing that their leader was defeated not by brute force, but by human ingenuity. Panic rippled through their ranks as they saw the humans controlling the battlefield, bending the ruins and technology to their advantage. They had never faced a species capable of such coordinated, intelligent resistance. Kale stepped forward, voice calm and commanding. "You underestimated humans," he said. "You assumed strength alone would decide the outcome. You were wrong. No warrior has ever faced what we can do when we think differently, and no warrior ever will." The city, once a hunting ground, now belonged to those who had been underestimated, dismissed, and thought weak. Kale turned to Lyra, smiling faintly. "We've proven something today. Humans are clever, adaptable, and relentless. They thought they could control us. They were wrong. I called you an idiot before, but I see now. You're extraordinary." The Xyler would carry the lesson back to their fleets. Humans were not prey. Humans were dangerous, clever, and impossible to predict. Lyra looked around at the devastated city, the fires slowly dying, the machines sparking in defeat. "Do you think they'll ever underestimate us again? They can never truly anticipate what we're capable of until it's too late." As the sun fully rose, Kale and Lyra reached the edge of the ruins, overlooking a valley where the Xyler had retreated. Smoke drifted upward, twisting in the sunlight, and for the first time in a long while the humans could breathe freely. The victory was theirs, not through brute force, not through overwhelming numbers, but through cleverness, courage, and an unshakable determination to survive. Lyra finally laughed, a sound of relief and exhilaration. "I can't believe we did it. No one will ever believe this story." Humanity had survived against impossible odds. They had proven their worth not just to the galaxy, but to themselves. No warrior, no machine, no force could match the combination of human courage, intelligence, and adaptability. Lyra stood beside him, breathing in the crisp morning air. "You really did something no warrior ever could," she whispered. Kale's lips curved in a faint, satisfied smile. "And no one ever will," he said softly. Together they descended from the ruins, walking through the city they had saved, the battlefield they had controlled, the proof of humanity's resilience and brilliance. The Xyler would retreat, defeated and humiliated, and the humans would rise stronger, smarter, and unstoppable. On Sci-fi Prime, in the heart of the ruins, two humans stood victorious against impossible odds, reminding the galaxy that no force could predict, contain, or defeat humanity when it fought with courage, wit, and ingenuity. The legacy of that victory would echo across worlds, a testament to the strength of being underestimated and the power of being human. And for Kale and Lyra, it was more than victory. It was proof that the human spirit, clever and unyielding, could face anything the universe could throw at it and triumph. The twin suns rose higher, bathing the ruined city in light. Humanity had survived, humanity had prevailed, and humanity had done the impossible.